This is the inside of my Apple II Plus computer. It was manufactured in the late 70s or early 80s. Now, if you look at the cards here, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate cards. I'm going to talk about what each of these is. This first card is what's called the language card. It includes an expansion of the memory. You notice these are all memory chips. And the Apple II, this particular Apple II, had 64 kilobytes of RAM, which could be extended here. Actually, 48 out of the box, but this last piece here would extend it to 64 and also add some additional capabilities in basic programming. So that's what this is. This is a language card for those extra memory to get us up to 64K. The rest of these cards, this one here is the disk controller card. Allows me to connect a floppy disk drive or two. But this card here, this last one in the sequence, you'll notice it has a little ribbon cable. And if you follow that ribbon cable, it goes out here to this music performance keyboard from Soundchaser Music Systems Passport Designs. And this is a music performance keyboard. And then that keyboard sends performance signals of notes and presses into the software, and it uses these two cards here. These two cards here are what is known as the Mountain Computers system. The exact, here it is. It's the Mountain Computer Music System. And what this is a hardware synthesizer. It produces 16 notes, 8 per channel, and allows you to create or generate a lot of synthesizer sounds. So when combined with this is a computer synthesizer system. There's a software that comes with it. There's the software that comes with the original computer music system, lets you do sequencing and sound design, and then there's also both the digital performance software and the more advanced, scooch forward a little bit here, the more advanced software, which is called the TurboTracks system. That's a 16-track digital performance and recording package. And then there's one last piece, which is kind of interesting. It is the TurboTracks sync to drum option. And if you look here, you'll see that what we have here is a little DIN cable. And what that does is it generates a synchronization. And in fact, what this system can do is it can send a synchronization signal out to an external drum machine or other synthesizer so that you can use this as part of a larger system. I have a box here that I haven't tried yet called the Kenton D-Sync, and its purpose is to take this outgoing synchronizing signal, convert it to a MIDI signal, and that should allow me to synchronize this particular machine with other more modern equipment. So that's what's going on inside the machine. When I took delivery of this particular system, a lot of this didn't work and I had to do some work, but I got it working, so it's very happy now. And you'll also notice there's a couple of wires coming out of here. These wires do two things. One, there's a left and right audio signal, but then there is also a signal for this, which is something called a light pen. Light pens were a way to have precision control on the screen before mice were invented, or at least before mice were readily available. So this reads a signal kind of like how an NES light gun would work when you're shooting ducks in Duck Hunt. It's a similar concept. It reads signals on the screen and it uses those to determine where the pen is on the screen, allows you to make some sort of menu choices. So I'm going to show you how this works. got things reassembled, and you'll notice that I have this fairly large monitor here. This is a 14-inch color video monitor that isn't really much different than a 14-inch color television. I'm using it as opposed to the old green screen because for gaming on the Apple II, which is something I also enjoy doing, that monitor is a lot more enjoyable to use. Now, I do have a floppy drive. It's right here, and I also have the original diskettes for the Soundchaser digital, the music system, etc. But I'd rather not use the diskettes if I don't have to, because, well, ancient diskettes are of questionable reliability, and I'd rather not damage them, and I'd rather not have to rely on them. Sitting on top of my computer here, you can see I have a little speaker system. That's nothing special. It's just a basic computer system. It's just a basic little sound system. But the left and right channel audio signals from the Apple II are going out into that system. Now, if I'm not going to use the floppy drive, the question is, how am I going to boot the software? The software is, there is no hard drive in an Apple II. This is before that was a common thing. There's a recent piece of hardware that has been developed called the floppy emu. This is kind of a cool little thing. It's from a website called Big Mess of Wires, and it uses an SD card the size of your fingernail sitting in here to store floppy disk images. So what you see is, I'm going to boot this up, and you will see how the floppy emu pretends to be a floppy drive. It emulates one of these, but in a more modern format. So as I turn the whole system on, things will happen. We'll get a little Apple II logo, and I'll be able to see here that the current disk that I'm trying to boot off of is just a basic sort of blank floppy, and that floppy has been initialized as a 64 kilobyte slave disk, and so therefore I have that. Now I can eject it. I can move to the Soundchaser apps, and on the internet I was able to find copies of all of these particular Soundchaser floppy disks, so I don't really have to use them. So I'm going to start by showing you the music system performance disk, because it's actually, oops, let's go back. It's actually a good demonstration of the system. So I have now put the virtual performance disk in the floppy drive, and I will ask the computer to boot off of it real quick. Now what we should be seeing here is the original performance software. As you can see that from the Soundchaser computer music system performance software. Now the cool thing, as you can see, it makes sound. I had the manual sitting on the keyboard. So the Soundchaser system here works under a very simple user interface. The numbers 1 through 0 are different presets. So you'll see there's a preset number right here, and if I hit a 1, it's on preset 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I can demonstrate how these presets sound different. So, pardon me, the presets are not set in stone. Those are just the ones that come with the system. And as we look here, if you're familiar at all with synthesizers, you will see that here we have ADSR, which for most people who are familiar with synthesizers, this is a attack, decay, sustain, release. And here we have a second set of values for attack, decay, sustain, release. These are for each of the left and the right channels. And then we have a volume. We have a number of LFO. We have 2 LFO settings here. I'm not going to get super deep into what the different settings are. And if we go into Q mode, that sort of takes us into disk mode. And if I were to catalog what's on this disk, I would see some of the things that are available. I would notice that there is a new, a rock, a test, a Canon, Hayden, a bunch of things. So if I wanted to try to load one, I might say something like load test Oops, sorry. Filming while typing. Load test tracks. Now I believe I have loaded that. I can switch back to the other mode just by hitting return. And now I'm here. So as you can see, I've got, if I want to turn that volume down completely, I would hit the V key, and you'll notice the volume will start flashing. And then I can use the arrows to raise and lower the volume. So if I want to make it a lot quieter, you notice those values seem a little weird. It's because they're in hexadecimal. They allow me to go in a lot more fine-grained to use hexadecimal values than to use regular decimal values. Notice how it's getting quieter and quieter. All right, and then if I'm done with that and I want that to be the value, I can do that, but I'm going to turn it back up a little bit. Okay, so we have some sound. All right, so that is how this basic performance software works. But the performance software is a little limited. The more interesting piece is what we would call the TurboTrax software. So I'm going to load that up now. Put that TurboTrax disk, virtual disk in, and I'm going to shut down the machine with the power strip. And we'll start it up again. Boot it up in TurboTrax mode. Now, very similar to the performance diskette, the TurboTrax one is going to come up here. But you'll notice that the user interface is a lot more complex, but it really kind of isn't. You still have your basic concept of attack, decay, sustain, release, and then we have got an octave, a wave, frequency modulation, modulation amount. That's the FM frequency modulation rate and the modulation amount. And then we have an oscillator setting. And then down here, you actually have presets 0 through F. So there's 16 presets. And this shows you which particular synthesizer voices, which particular oscillators are enabled per preset. So you'll notice like preset 0 here has got 0 and 8 enabled. So if I am on preset 0, which as I can see here, I can change that to 0. And this is what 0 sounds like. Now the reason there's a K pre and an L pre, this is to allow you to do a split keyboard. So let's just say I wanted this lower K pre to be good for, say, the first, the keyboard up to just below this C. All right, so what I can do is I can choose to do a split. I can hit S for split. I can hit that key where I want it to split. Now I can see that it's split at 17. Now I can keep this preset for the lower half of the split. And at 17, we're moving up to the one I had, but below that, we're on a different preset. And this allows me to do like, you have a bass line going down here, different one up here, and you'll notice that these are polyphonic. This is not mono. But if I were to change to, say, this preset F, where all of the voices are happening on this preset, this would be a monophonic preset. So let me show you this. I'm going to change the split. All right, now the whole keyboard's playing the same thing. And now I'm going to change the preset to F. Okay, that's like the 16th preset. Now what I've got here is going to be very monophonic, so I can go. it's using all of its voices, so it can't really handle polyphony at that point. So what's really cool here is not only do I have this basic performance mode, but I can hit escape and it will put me into this sequencer mode. Now the sequencer mode has a couple of options. It has a loop mode where you can basically create a pattern and it will repeat over and over again, or you can actually record individual sequencer tracks all the way through to 16 tracks. And if I leave this mode and I go into the disc mode again, I can see that we've got one called work tracks. That might be worth loading up, so let's try and do that. So let's load work. What kind of thing am I loading? Tracks. Now, what I should have is when I go into my sequencer mode here, I've just loaded a actual track, and I can play this by hitting the space bar. This thing tends to overload the particular speakers I have a little bit. I'll stop playing that anytime I want by hitting the space bar. So as you can see, this thing is relatively well and capable of quite a bit. So also another thing I can do when I'm in here and I'm looking at a oops, I hit the wrong key. When I'm looking at one of these presets, there's a whole nother set of capabilities that I haven't even gotten into. One is pitch bending. So let's just say I wanted to be able to have the pitch bend when I can set the pitch bend to up or down, and what that does is allows me to use a paddle controller along with the pitch bend. So I'm going to put my elbow on a key. See, that's kind of cool. It's like a modulation effect. So the other thing that I didn't show, because frankly I just haven't really learned how to do it yet, is how to actually edit these presets. You can actually go into this wave mode, and if you would like to display, for example, what the wave looks like on oscillator 0, this will draw that for you. That is the wave shape that is being used to generate the sound for the wavetable synthesis for oscillator 0. And I can also go back, and let's just go back again, and so I've cleared that out, and now I'm going to display, for example, the LFO. This is what the low frequency oscillator is doing on that particular pitch. So these waves can be crafted within the application in order to generate different waveforms, and you can combine those waveforms with low frequency oscillation to create a pretty massive variety of different sounds, which I got to admit is kind of cool, right? I'm going to go ahead and go back to this view. So considering the limitations of the user interface that they had at their disposal, and of course the 64K hardware that they had at their disposal, I gotta admit, I'm pretty impressed with what they were able to do with the Soundchaser system. I intend to put this to a little bit more use. I want to try actually crafting some different cool sounds with it, and I want to try using my little output system here with the drum sync to be able to synchronize this with other more advanced, more modern synthesizer gear and see what can be done, because it's kind of neat. I've barely started to scratch the surface of what this system can do, but as a 38-year-old oddity that I never encountered until recently. I gotta admit, I think it's kind of cool. So that is a little bit of an overview of the capabilities and the functions of the 1982-83 Soundchaser Passport Designs music system based around the Mountain Computer music system for the Apple II. Kind of a cool, old, weird-ass synthesizer situation, and a lot of fun to play with.